Passion, for me at least, is a key ingredient in anything that I do. I've worked jobs that I've woken up every day being like, my heart really isn't in this. Wonderbelly, on the other hand, is something that I love talking about. I love learning about. I love exploring. I love building. I do really truly feel like we're doing something good. Of course, not everyone has the privilege or luxury to be able to do something like that, but if you can, it allows you to get over a lot of those things that might stop you from moving forward because you're just like, I believe in this too much.
Welcome to Marketing Happy Hour. I'm Cassie, consultant, podcaster, and your host. Every Thursday, you'll hear episodes packed with insights from brand leaders on an array of topics, from crafting effective marketing strategies and hitting career goals to building leadership skills and launching your own business. Inspired by those unfiltered happy hour combos with peers, this show is all about practical, empowering chats to support your professional journey. So grab your favorite drink and let's get to the episode. So I'm very excited. I have Lucas Kraft joining me today of Wonderbelly. We're going to dive into just the development of the brand, of course, all the marketing that goes behind it, the branding that goes behind it. Welcome to the show, Lucas. So stoked to have you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm always stoked to chat with founders, CEOs, leaders inside of brands because you definitely have a different perspective, of course, being kind of behind the scenes and from day one of developing what you've created. And so looking forward to that conversation. But first I have to ask you, of course, kind of a twofold question. So one is what's been in your glass lately? And then I also have to know your current favorite Wonderbelly flavor as well.
What's been in my glass is sparkling water.
Love it.
As you know, it's not just water, it's fun. It makes water
Yes.
fun. And my favorite Wonderbelly flavor, I switch off
Okay.
between two. Right now, I'm back on strawberry milk.
Yes.
But I can be a tropical fruit man at times.
Okay.
And then we have a new flavor coming out that might become my favorite flavor. That'll come out in about a month or so. But I'm really
Okay.
excited about that.
Excellent. We'll stay tuned for that. I too love strawberry milkshake very much. It tastes great. Like I can't tell you. Definitely get your hands on some because it's awesome. But yeah, that's my current favorite. But also love a good sparkling water. So I'm right there with you. I love it. So, Lucas, I have to know, of course, just kind of your journey with developing Wonderbelly. It's a very deeply personal story of yours, and I loved reading about it prior to this interview. But just curious, how did your experience and just story shape this brand and its mission overall?
Totally, yeah. It's a story I tell a lot, as you can imagine. The brand Wonderbelly and the idea for the product, the idea for the brand, all of that, it really came about in 2020. But I always start this story when I was 15 years old because that's when it started for me. At 15 years old, I developed bulimia, and I'd never heard of another man experiencing an eating disorder at that age. I was probably in 10th grade or something. At that point, we'd had talks about drunk driving and the dangers of drugs and all that, but nobody ever talked to us what to do if you had an eating disorder. So the only information I had was really based off of movies, and they never depicted somebody who resembled myself. So I didn't know what to do with this information. I could barely understand it, and I could only imagine that the people around me, my peers, the other kids who were 15 years old, they wouldn't understand it. So out of shame and fear of alienation, I hid it for about 10 years. And over the course of those 10 years, it progressed. It got worse, as something like bulimia does. And in my mid-20s, I was ending up in ERs and doctor's offices because of the damage I was causing myself. I was fortunate at that time to find recovery for my eating disorder, but I had already done permanent lifelong damage to my digestive system. So according to the doctors I had to see, they said the only thing that I could really do at that point was take medicine every day to manage the symptoms. So I started taking antacids and products like Zantac on a daily basis to manage these daily symptoms. And what I always say about those products is they're really effective. There's a reason why some of these brands that you see on the medicine aisle, they've been around since our grandparents' generation and even their grandparents' generation. Like they've been around for almost 100 years. It's because they work, and they got me through almost another decade until 2020 rolled around, and Zantac, one of the products I was using, an article came out saying it was found to contain a carcinogen and it is no longer safe for human consumption. Throw it out immediately. And it didn't mince words about it. It wasn't like maybe you should. It was throw this out immediately. I opened up my medicine cabinet and there's my shelf that's just filled with Zantac bottles. And I panic and I throw it out. And I realize, at that point in time, I had already started my journey of seeking out better for you options within food, within beverage, and also within skincare, understanding ingredients and organic and non GMO. But I never applied it to medicine because my medicine products, I just assumed that inherently they have to be healthy for you, right? And so I looked at the back of a lot of my medicines and I saw ingredients that I was avoiding in all of my other products. And I was like, okay, 2020, there's going to be a lot of alternatives there aren't in medicine. It's the same brands, again, that our grandparents and even great grandparents were using. And that's when I brought my brother in, and I was like, selfishly, I want to create a product for me because I want to use it and I need it. And it just isn't really available out there. And so that's where Wonderbelly came about. My brother and I set off and started it.
Yeah. And it's kind of that testament too to, if chances are if you have a need for something, there's other people out there that have a need, right? So I love this story, and thank you so much for sharing, by the way, just of how it starts just with that concept, and then discovering, what if I fulfill that need? What if I create something that helps to not only helps myself, but also serves other people? I'm curious too, just because we have a lot of listeners, there's a lot of marketers listening, of course, but there's also marketers and other professionals who kind of have a similar story. They're like, I have this idea for something that I feel like I could benefit from. There's probably other people out there. So what was kind of that first step of developing your own product? Did you kind of start to mock up designs first? Did you think about the ingredients of the product? Like, what was kind of that first step that you took there?
There were a couple, and I'm not even sure exactly which came first. They all sort of started to happen simultaneously in a way, at least as I remember it. But I'm a creative. Like, I can show you 1,000 versions of Wonderbelly before it became Wonderbelly that I'd started making immediately. Funny story, not many people know this. Wonderbelly actually was initially called Aunt Acids, like AUNT space
Yeah.
acids. We ultimately decided, wait, there's other products we might create in digestive medicine that aren't
Right.
antacids, so that would be really confusing if we, created a laxative that was called antacids. So we scrapped that and we went with Wonderbelly. But I definitely did that. But at the same time, we had to validate that this
Mhm.
was a product that belonged on the market, that was worth investing and all of that. So we had to do a lot of research, and of course, like instinctually I was like, i I believe there are other people out there like myself, um but at the same time we were sort of skeptical because there's new products in every category, new sparkling waters, new chip brands, new beauty products popping up left and right, even new supplements, but there's just no new medicine. We're like, there has to be a reason. Like, and so we were really skeptical, but after doing a lot of research it became really clear, it's a lot of regulatory. It takes a lot of, it's not really simple to just create and put it on the market. There's a lot of barriers before you can do that, so it's difficult to do. But there's a massive generation of people that we were able to identify that are, millennials, Gen X even, and have a set of values that just don't align with the medicine that's on the market, and they're experiencing the issues that older generations that are using these products are using. So we were like, seems pretty straightforward. We should create a product for this enormous group of people that aren't being spoken to.
Yeah. Well, and so kind of like on that journey and process, at some point you get to brand identity and brand voice and everything, right? Which of course comes through a lot in marketing in a number of different channels and ways. So I'm curious for you too, when you got to that stage, what was your process for crafting Wonderbelly's brand voice and identity? And has it evolved over time, or did it evolve at the beginning? You mentioned with the brand name specifically, or was it kind of clear to you at the start of how this brand would be portrayed visually and verbally, even too, just infusing through your copy on your website and everything? Like, what was that process like for you?
I really loved that process. I can tell you that it definitely evolved over time. One thing that was very clear that hasn't changed is we wanted the brand voice to be authentic to us, to be our voice, really. But more than that, a human voice. I mean, you hear that all the time with startups, but so like it sounds sort of copied, but especially in our space, we're going up against, big pharma brands. They don't have a voice. They're just these corporate cold brands that are, run by faceless people. So for us, it was really important. This felt human. And the way the way we started we didn't nail the voice at the beginning. I can tell you that. We thought, okay, humor can play a big role. We really want to destigmatize. We want to bring some of the levity into these conversations about issues that people are having. We may have overcorrected there, and we were like, we're going to be super reverent, almost like liquid death tone of voice, which is so unfitting for our brand and so not what people want from medicine, which we learned really, really quickly. Like, the slogan that we started off with was, since we were battling things like acid reflux, we were like, cool, our slogan is no flux given.
Right.
And that wasn't received horribly well. So we pulled it back, but we didn't want to strip it from our character. And I really love puns, and I created a bunch. So we realized, there is a way we can balance the humor, the human, with the credibility that we are medicine. We have incredibly talented and intelligent scientists and people working on a product that we don't want to sort of like give the sense that we're just like some random soda company. We're medicine. So we were able to find a voice that the way we describe it is the young doctor that knows how to talk to you, that knows how to sit down next to you and make you feel welcome and comfortable, but also isn't afraid to sometimes swear. So you feel a little bit more like, oh, this guy's like a guy, not like this sort of like just looking at a chart and then walks out of the room, which we think of as like the big pharma brands. It's like this sort of like comes in, checks some boxes, tells you some stuff that you're like, that's not very helpful, and then walks out of the room. And you're like, but so that's how we started to really think about it.
I like that. And I love this idea too. I know we talk a lot about this in marketing, but almost developing this persona, kind of human figure behind your brand. And I feel like having that personality and even like what do they look like and how do they talk and everything nailed down is really helpful for crafting every piece of content that goes out there, because you have that kind of solidified. So I love that, even just as a reminder to marketers, to, if you have not done that practice, definitely make sure you're locking that down. So it's a great reminder. So I wanna know too, you've kind of mentioned some interesting notes just about how this brand is not that sterile medical brand that you are used to when you go to, a store and pick up medicine. So first impressions, I'm sure for you guys, people I can imagine are like, oh wow, like this is a fun spin on this medicine that I grew up with. And so how are first impressions for you guys? How important is that, and what's kind of the key to making a strong first impression in your opinion with the branding and the messaging and all of those different elements?
It's really important. It's also a challenge. Like, we're basically a retail first business. We don't have our own D2C site. Everything we do is physical retail stores, or if you buy like target.com or amazon.com. But one thing we've noticed is we can make the most beautiful brand, but our category isn't a category that people are used to browsing in. People don't walk down the medicine aisle and think, I wonder what's new here. they know that they're going to go get their Tylenol. They're going to go get their NyQuil. Like, they know the brand, they know the product already. And there isn't ever a new version or a new competing brand that they have to think, I wonder if there's anything worth considering. That just hasn't been sort of conditioned with people. So that has been a challenge. However, we've really been able to stand out through changing the form, like the shape of the product, the material. It's metal, it's not plastic, the color. And one thing that we like, even visually, one thing that was really important to me was, I want our bottle or packaging to represent the warmth and the joy and the liveliness that you get from relief. It's always been so odd to me that medicine is so impersonal visually. It feels so corporate when it's such a personal product. And it is a product that's supposed to represent joy and sort of being freed from the shackles of discomfort. But you don't get that from the packaging, and I wanted our packaging to represent that. So it is really important to us. One thing we hear a lot that was what we were aiming for, and when we were talking about it, is medicine's also something that you hide away in your medicine cabinet. It's something that people are ashamed of, they're shy about. We wanted to start to bridge that to, we want a product to sit next to your beauty products on your bathroom. Or if it rolls out of your purse, you're not scrambling to push it back in so nobody sees. Or you're not even afraid to put it out on your desk at work, because it both looks pretty, but it feels more a part of your own identity rather than something like you're embarrassed about. And so that was another big thing. And that's what I think people recognize when they see it, is literally attractiveness.
I love that. And I'm curious too, kind of pivoting to more of, the marketing and content strategy behind Wonderbelly. You mentioned how you're essentially, this is a space that people aren't really thinking about what's new out there, what's fresh and everything. So how has social media, digital channels, whatever you want to reference, played a part in educating the consumers, not only about the brand, that it's there, that it's an alternate option to some of the brands that they, again, it's more of that sterile thing we grew up with. So educating that it's there, but also educating that, you mentioned better for you products. Like, this is a better alternative option. So how are you kind of thinking about marketing channels as a function for education specifically?
Yeah, I mean, so education is extremely important for us. There's a lot of burden on us to do, like, you'd be surprised how little people know, and also how little the brands before us have done to help inform people. A lot of them actually benefit from people not understanding, thinking, oh, this product's a cure-all, when really it really solves one issue, but they've allowed themselves to be understood as, anything wrong with my stomach, I can take this and I'll feel better. So we do try to do a lot of education in hopes to help people understand what the right product is for them, but also in hopes the more you understand something, the less scary it is, and the more willing you might be to treat it or address it. So that's something big for us. But the channels we use, we really do rely on social media, organic social. We don't really do a lot with ads, because we happen to live in a space that people are becoming more comfortable talking about organically. I mean, there's trends on TikTok, gut talk, I don't know if you're familiar with, or hot girls with stomach issues, or things like that, where people are actually really invested in sharing their own experiences. And we've been able to become a part of that in a really special way. And also, our product it's so funny. Once you hit like 30 years old, you get weirdly excited about things like antacids. So we do see a lot of really genuine, organic people wanting to share about us, talk about us. And that's been really special. I have to give credit where credit is due. Our head of marketing, Blythe, and our head of social, Alyssa, they've done an amazing job at getting us out there. And so just want to shout them out.
Yeah, no, amazing. Thank you for doing that. You guys have some regulation being in the space that you're in. So what challenges have been presented to you due to that? And how are you guys kind of getting creative to shuffle around that and continue to serve your community with content?
Yeah, so there's some, we're restrained in certain areas, like we can't sell on TikTok Shop because we're an OTC medicine. There's certain places we can't advertise. There's certain things we can't say because we're an OTC medicine. And so So we have to get creative around that. And it is interesting how it's sort of stifled from, like, it causes us to come up with more, I guess, guerrilla tactics on ways to get in front of people, which has offered us the ability to find channels that aren't used too often, and aren't oversaturated. And so that's been like, we really have started to lean into these different kinds of activations. I wrote a book called The Adult's Guide to Farts as a way to like try to destigmatize farting, just like a very normal digestive process, which I always have found so funny because people are so embarrassed about it, but really it would be so much worse if you didn't fart, like physically, like anatomically. That would be weird. But so I wrote this like coffee table book that looks like a children's book, but it's for adults to help remind you that like it's okay if you fart, and farting's actually good. And so we did that, and Demi Moore read it to like her kids, who are all grown-ups.
Awesome.
But like we had a lot of fun with it. It ended up getting organically picked up by like People Magazine and Marie Claire, and like so we've had to get really creative on creating touch points that people want to talk about, so that we can sort of like crowdsource our marketing in a way.
Yeah. And then how about story too? Even you, for example, coming on this podcast, sharing your story as kind of a gateway to developing this brand, but also story on social, story on your website. There's a lot of kind of storytelling, not only of yourself, but also the consumer story in a way of like, dealing with some issues that you've dealt with in the past and using this brand as a way to help resolve that. What do you think story is kind of like how do you think it's a pivotal piece in your messaging and your content, and how do you kind of look at that as a strategy or tactic per se?
Well, it is really important for a couple reasons. Like, my story is not horribly unique. What I went through, yes, it's unique, like the entire journey that it ended with me starting Wonderbelly. But like, when I talk to people about bulimia, they basically often tell my story back to me, which was their experience, because there's so much connectivity, there's so much similarity. And I didn't know that before I started speaking up about my bulimia. I thought nobody would understand. And so starting Wonderbelly, I realized, this is a chance that I can actually, by sharing my story, start to let other people know, you're not the only ones out there. And the most important thing I ever did for my recovery was speak up, say to somebody else, hey, this is something I'm struggling with, because I wasn't able to recover on my own, like just by myself. I had to share it with somebody. And this ties into why education and why destigmatization is so important to our brand. Is it's not just eating disorders that, getting people more familiar with the topic, more educated on the topic. It's not just that benefits it. Destigmatizing things like farting, or like even heartburn or diarrhea. You might be struggling with something like that. If you're ashamed to talk about it or embarrassed, you might not receive the help you need to figure out what's going on because of that shame. So if we can help destigmatize your ability to say the word, merely just say the word diarrhea, but also shop. People are ashamed to shop in the aisle for products that might help them with stuff like that. But if we can get over that, you might actually be able to live a healthier life, because you're able to figure out, okay, why is this happening? How do I stop this discomfort? Things like that. So it's symbolic in a way to be able to talk about my own past with something that I considered a shameful thing or a secret, to bleed into how it also affects so many other things in our life. And I work with like NEDA and National Eating Disorder Association. I said it like those are two different things. That's the exact same. NEDA is National Eating Disorder Association. And we do a lot of work trying to raise awareness around eating disorders, because it is super important, but it's just sort of brushed under the rug by society. So we've found that's using our platform to help raise awareness around that has been really helpful.
Yeah. And I'm sure it's encouraged, to your point, other people to start to speak up and share their story. And I think having your brand as kind of a platform to do that kind of good is pretty amazing. So kudos to you just for getting out there and starting that, and now just building this brand that helps to kind of pioneer more of those conversations. It's amazing. Curious too, you know, in a way, Wonderbelly is this disruptive brand, right? Like you're kind of breaking through this very traditional old school space. And so I am just curious, you know, overall, like if there was one lesson that you could share on building a brand that is kind of breaking through the noise and breaking the mold of a space, you know, what is that one lesson that you would pass along?
I think the lesson that the answer that I'd give to this, it's not exclusive to a brand that has to be disruptive or that is met with like a lot of challenges. It really applies to anything that I think people invest their time into. Is passion, for me at least, is a key ingredient in anything that I do. And you know, that might not apply to everyone, but I've worked jobs or I've even started companies that I've woken up every day being like, my heart really isn't in this. Of course, it's exciting, the prospect of potentially, you know, this becoming a big company, but what I'm doing day to day isn't something I'm horribly interested in or horribly personally invested in. Wonderbelly, on the other hand, is something that every aspect I love talking about, I love learning about, I love exploring, I love building. I do really truly feel like we're doing something good. We're fighting against big pharma in a way and trying to correct some of the things that have been sort of neglected in that space. So I really do feel like on a daily basis every win is a big win. The small, like something super small and minuscule, it's still really exciting. And that's so important, I think. That passion piece, the ability to wake up every day and be like, the win here is that I get to do this. Of course, not everyone has the privilege or luxury to be able to do something like that, but if you can, it allows you to fight past the fear. It allows you to get over a lot of those things that might stop you from moving forward because you're just like, I believe in this too much. But yeah, that was like one of the most important things for me, is it's allowed me to trudge forward in times where it just was overcome by the fact that I was like, this is just too important to me to not try to accomplish.
Yeah. Great advice. And kind of in addition to that, just thinking about your own personal story and your own personal interest. You mentioned being a creative and just wondering, you know, as a founder, how are you personally staying creative and innovative in your space day to day and just coming up with fresh and new ideas? Like, what does that kind of just look like for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, creativity can go into anything. It doesn't have to be graphic design. It doesn't have to be music or something in the arts. It can
Mhm.
go into like, I used to be in sales, and I always thought my strongest thing that I had was my creativity. How to get creative in, you know, this sales pitch, or there was an obstacle in the way. How do I creatively get around that? It's but here at Wonderbelly, my creativity definitely is far more in the like graphic design, sort of like a copy marketing concepts thing. I still get to mess around with our packaging and, you know, design what our new products will look like. That's something I get a lot. I love doing. I sometimes help with the social media posts and designing those. I do get my hands dirty with a lot of actual like graphic design stuff, but strategically I get to be creative, and in everything I get to sort of try to put my own creativity in. At least that's how I view it.
Yeah, for sure. And as we're recording this, we're kind of at the, I would say, still first ish half of 2025. So, on the marketing and creative front, too, is there anything going into the rest of this year that you're excited to test or kind of keep tabs on in the world of marketing and creative, and just some maybe strategies you and the team are curious to try out going into the rest of the year?
Yeah. So there's a lot. 2025 is going to be a really big year for us. Wonderbelly launched really like 2023 in retail. And so only in about 2 years have we gone from 0 stores to, I think we're in about 20,000 or so stores,
Awesome.
but we're in Target nationwide, CVS nationwide, and in about a month's time, we are about to launch in another massive retailer as well. I can't announce it just yet, but and then we're also launching our third product line. So we have antacids for heartburn, we have bloat and gas relief for bloat and gas. That's a pretty self-explanatory product. And then we're launching a third product line in digestive medicine, which we're really excited about. So those two things, the big retailer that we're rolling into nationwide this year and the third product line that we're going to be launching, they're really exciting. There's still so much stuff to do here, and we've got a lot of really fun marketing activations and partnerships that we're going to be announcing in the coming weeks even, but also months.
Awesome. Well, speaking of that, would love to know where we can stay in touch with your brand just overall, and then also you personally. Are you on LinkedIn? Like, where do you like to hang out? But would love to know that just so we can keep track of some of those launches and things coming up. Super stoked for you guys on all of that.
Yeah, of course. Well, follow us on Instagram. It's Wonderbelly. You can also follow, the brand on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. I post every once in a while, and I'm personally not really a big on social media, like my own personal brand. But so if you want to follow me, I would say follow Wonderbelly, and then LinkedIn, you can follow my personal account.
Amazing. Well, Lucas, thank you so much for sharing your personal story, just the story of building this brand. Again, we're so stoked to stay in touch with you and you guys just overall and see kind of what you have coming up. It's truly an awesome brand. I'm a huge fan. I've shared it with friends and family and they love it too now. And so just love what you've built and just looking forward to seeing what's next for you all.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this week's episode. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love your feedback. And if you're ready to take things to the next level, sign up for my weekly newsletter in the show notes. You'll get weekly career and marketing insights straight to your inbox. And if you have an idea for a future Marketing Happy Hour episode, shoot me an email. hello@marketinghappyhr.com. Thank you again, and I'll see you next Thursday.